upcoming markets. We had discussions with the first providers of mitigation outcomes that are negative emissions and not just avoidance credits. We did that since 2003 as Swiss Re, one of the largest reinsurers of the world. So we are a financial institution, which puts us in a good position to start having these conversations on climate solutions and on compensation, on neutralization early, simply for the fact that we have not so much operational emissions, and our financial flows are a completely different topic, not the one of today. So we started in 2003 to compensate the operational emissions that we had in scope, that we could measure, that we could control well, through back then, I think for the first time, the type of carbon avoidance credits that mentioned co-benefits as a thing. So these were World Bank funds, the Community Development Fund. The credits were up to $20 per ton, which was outworldly at the time, and after the collapse of Kyoto, again outworldly. And then we increased the level of integrity of quality even furthermore. We just required the proper standards until we said you have to go a step further. It's not that we should compensate and pay somebody else to avoid his or her emissions in our stead, but that if we are responsible for residual emissions, we ought to pay somebody to take it back out of the atmosphere immediately and store it durably. So that started in a program that we called CO2 Net Zero program in 2021. And this was funded by an internal carbon price, a stringent internal carbon price. We collect money from all over the world where we do business and spend it then on the type of carbon removal and also carbon offsets that we consider appropriate. We had to draft our own standard in this 2019-2018 period because there was just no standard, where you could delineate what is a good credit, what is a bad, and what is an ugly one. But now we are way into that program. We charge currently $134 per ton for each ton that we still emit within the in-scope emissions that we have under control and measure, as mentioned. And this is not by far everything, but we can expand from here. And by 2030, this climbs to $200, and this is also the year when we want to do full neutralization of those in-scope emissions. So this is a bit our journey. We have different access paths to these emerging markets. We also feel that the first buyers also play quite a role in signaling the right demand signals, in being market creators. And the way to get this through your management is not making a mutualistic or altruistic story out of it, but to say, hey, it's going to be the next $1 trillion industry, carbon removal. You better want to be out there early in order to ride the wave all the way through. Let's hand over to who's next, Diego?
Diego is next. Thank you so much, Misha. So Diego from Exomat Green.
Thank you, Misha. Thank you, Leila, and all the Carbon Future team for having us here. It's great to be speaking in this very important panel. I'm Diego Justiniano. I'm the president and CEO of Exomat Green. Exomat Green, it's a division of Exomat, which is the largest wood exporter and producer of sustainable products in Bolivia. We started operations as Exomat Green in 2023, sorry. And in that time, or since that time, we have been able to scale up significantly and become number one producer and delivery company for biochar carbon credits in the world. We have 2 operational facilities, including the largest biochar facility in the world, and one more on planning phase, which we're going to begin in next year. We have currently over 65,000 tons of CO2 that has been removed from the atmosphere, and we have sold over 250,000 tons up so far. Next year, we plan on scaling up capacity to reach close to 360,000 tons for the phase 1 of our project. We have been able in this time so far to provide soil amendment with free biochar to over 7,000 hectares, mostly for indigenous and small farmers in Bolivia. We have a large customer base for our credits that include many of the Fortune 500 companies and in very diverse sectors. And we're here to basically share all the insights that we have on this quite interesting journey that we have been doing, and very open to all the questions that you guys have in the panel.
Great, thank you so much, Diego. And just a note for everyone listening, we just shared in the chat links to actually Swiss Re and Exomat case studies. So you can learn more both from Misha and Diego today, and then follow up and read about their journey or Swiss Re and Exomat's journey in the case studies that were just shared. And now, Duncan, you're next to talk about Octavia Carbon.
Hey everyone, thank you Laila and the rest of the Carbon Future team for having me here. My name is Duncan Kariuki. I am the co-founder and CPO of Octavia Carbon. Octavia is the Global South's first direct air capture company. We develop, manufacture, and will soon deploy our proprietary direct air capture in Kenya's Rift Valley. We started our operations in 2022, and in that time we've developed everything from right from the material science to the engineering and the manufacturing, and are now building a project. So as Laila mentioned, that's where I am right now at our facility. We'll have the first phase coming online by the end of the year. Really excited about this conversation to really talk about how we're thinking about our own digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, and what will we see it playing in the industry. Thank you for having me.
Great, thanks so much, Duncan. We'll hear from you a bit later. And then finally, Benno to talk about Pro.Earth.
Thanks. It's a pleasure being here. So thanks a lot for having me. I'm really excited to speak in with this great panel about DMRV today. My name is Benno Fuchs. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Pro.Earth, and I'm dialing in from Munich, Germany, if anybody cares. So who are we? We are the leading standard for durable carbon removal. So we've been the first standard and registry focusing purely on carbon removal, carbon dioxide removal, no avoidance credits whatsoever. Thanks also, Leila, for describing a bit what the standard per se does, very well described. We are the ones who claim to set the standard and to set the overarching guidelines and methodologies of what we expect carbon removal activities to do, and what data to deliver for us to understand, is it a, as Misha put it, a good, a bad, or a really bad project. We were founded in 2018, so we've been around for, given how nascent the market is, for quite a while already. We've got meanwhile 90 plus registered projects in basically all across the world in 20 plus countries. This year we have an issuance of roughly 500,000 tons already. So while we started relatively small, we are seeing quite a scale and quite an interest in the market of CDR, carbon removal supplies in the market. And what's really critical and important for us, and that's what we are going to speak about today with DMRV, is how do we make data accessible? How do we interpret data ourselves? How can we use systems that help us ingest data better to the best of our abilities to help us, but also to help buyers to eventually, and I think that's what we all want to do, bring funding into those projects and companies that actually remove carbon from the atmosphere. And I'm excited to talk about that today. Over to you, Leila.
Great. Thank you, Benno, and welcome. And with that, we'll actually move into the Q&A, which is why we're here, to share more about the work that each organization is doing and the role of MRV. We'll kick off with some of the questions that were pre-submitted. And again, thanks to those of you who took time to share what you're interested in hearing about today. And Misha, we'll go back to you first with a set of questions related to really how buyers are deciding to purchase CDR credits. And specifically from a buyer's perspective, if you can share what are the most critical factors when evaluating a CDR project. Another question that's come in, if you can talk about at the same time, how exactly does MRV affect carbon credit buyers' decisions?
Yeah, as mentioned, we are in a good position because I happen to have studied this carbon removal field. I have a PhD in it, and I then went off to work for Swiss Re. So, but not everybody had this in-house knowledge from the 2018 year on. But we could sit down and figure out what is actually important when we buy CDR, and we made from the beginning clear we are after the climate value, only secondarily about the nature and the people value. So as mentioned, we just have to get the climate value straight. Otherwise, any neutralization or compensation claim would be nullified. So in our first standard, we had 4 areas where we looked at. The first is integrity. That's where MRV plays a role. And it means everything. It means no harm. It means what method is applied. Is this solid? And methods were scarce until Puro showed up, right? What about the registry itself and also different hats? Are the method developers the same with the registry, the same with the MRV? So all of this is basically embedded in integrity, where MRV, in particular digital MRV, and in particular independent digital MRV, which is Carbon Future's case, adds this extra level of safety. And I'm going to talk why this is so important. But so this is integrity. Second was durability that we looked at. Again, well, if you want to neutralize real emissions, you need real negative emissions, and the real negative emissions is not if the danger is just super huge that the next year my negative emission goes back in the air. So that tilted us a bit towards what you would then recognize as technological CDR solutions to begin with, to be on the safe side. Then scalability, and you have different ways of looking at this. Some would argue, well, if you have reached $100 per ton by 2030, you're worth becoming my supplier. I was always opposing this because it was too immature of a market and of a supply base in order to give them such stark prerequisites. And then, of course, what you do is everybody ticks the box, yes, I'm going to be at $100, and then the whole world starts thinking CDR costs $100 in 2030, which I can assure you it won't. Okay. And the closer we get to 2030, the more proven right. So durability, scalability, we rather looked at, almost in a planetary boundary way, what's actually still there in 2050 and can play that key role for the second half of the century that negative emissions are supposed to play. And again, that tilted us a bit towards the technological solutions and not towards the nature-based solutions to begin with. And the last, this was co-benefits, right? So if you have a choice, if you are ever in the world of having a choice between a credit that can demonstrate, again, through MRV, hopefully, some co-benefits, so nature value and people value, go for it. Why not? Why shouldn't you? This is, for the first 20 years of the carbon markets, where you could really make a difference, where you could really have some storytelling behind. Now, we're not in a storytelling world anymore with carbon markets. It's a pre-compliance market. It's not a term I invented, but I really like it. It's a pre-compliance market. We really have to get things right. We have to do carbon accounting right. There is scrutiny all over. There is a pro-ESG movement and an anti-ESG movement, and there is a legislator who comes either on either of the two sides. And in that respect, as mentioned, we would still be in the phase where we look at climate value predominantly. But these are the 4 that we have looked at in order to judge or to evaluate projects. Now, just one more thing on how we could do that. As a financial institution, we were lucky of having a so-called ESG risk framework in place. So whatever transaction we do financially, wherever we direct our financial flows to, we run that. So we have some red, green, amber system, automatic pop-ups. You need to submit as a referral because you're going to do a deal in that industry, in this country, or with this pre-flagged client even. And then we have sustainability experts who check, and they can even go to controversies. So they check what media reports have been out there. And when we are in doubt, we can run that system and explore these